right, Shalom, Shalom. Bragadaya Bashim Shai Bahasham Rakakwadash. Double honors to our apostles, elder bishops here at Great Millstone Shalom, two brothers who are pushing the work in truth with all sincerity. The name of this lesson is As a Roaring Lion. Okay, as a roaring lion. Okay, and that comes from the scripture here, 1 Peter 5:8. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. Okay. The NLT says, 1 Peter 5:8, stay alert, watch out for your great enemy, right? Your great enemy. And this is important because most of our people don't realize or won't acknowledge the fact that we have, all right, a great enemy, which is what? The devil. He prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Okay. And of course, you know, that's his MO. And we know that the time is getting short, okay, especially uh, because we see our enemies moving in such a way um, that is very, threatening to, you know, our, so-called freedom of, you know, uh, and more so freedom to speak truth, okay? And, Esau is, about to come down heavy on those who speak truth, truths against power, especially if you hold this word, the word of life, this Bible, because this book exposes the wicked for who they are, and it tears down the strongholds of this world. And we know this world was built on deception, it was built on, deceiving, you know, the powers that be, they rule in such a way, of course, as the scriptures put it in Ephesians 6:12, spiritual wickedness in high places, you know, and they have been exposed because of the Lord has lifted their skirts and revealed the wicked in our time, and their response to it is to pretty much shut down all avenues of truth because they are grieved. The enemy is grieved, and so what else can he do but attack those and slander and as the scriptures say, accuse. All right, the accuser of thine brethren. Okay, I want to play this clip. Fair use, fair use, fair use. This is for educational purposes only. All right, this is Esau mounting up, okay, to attack the truth. Okay, and we are warned and have been warned to be spiritually ready for these things. All right, particularly this, because he's going to attack the ministry, and a lot of people are going to be offended. A lot of people are going to be jumping and switching sides, you know. And but we were warned, all right. And this must needs be, okay, because we will enter into another glory, right? And that glory is, essentially the Lord, stepping in and lifting up a standard against the enemy, okay. A lot more things we're gonna see happen, okay. You know, brothers might have to, go through it, as far as being arrested, being slandered, and all sorts of things, family turning against you, and all of those type of things, are on the horizon. But we know, we understand, and the scriptures say what, woe to those that offend, or, let me see if I can get that. Offenses must come, as the scriptures say. All right, but woe to them by who they come. All right. Okay. Because this thing is definitely, this is a time of testing, Salakia, that, you know, we're going to have to deal with. All right. So Matthew 8:18 and 7. It's the red letter, right? That means the Lord is speaking. Okay. And the Lord said, stumbling blocks. Okay. Because this truth has a lot of stumbling blocks. Why? Because most people who hear it are not worthy of it. And the only ones that truly are going to get the light of understanding the truth that seals them for salvation are those who are pure in heart, all right, and they can, get past all the obstacles that prevent one from, accepting the truth wholeheartedly, because a lot of people have gotten offended. A lot of people get offended in us, and they depart from us, because they're offended, and that's just what it is. The Lord warned us. We are in the flesh, and we're prone to make mistakes, and that's what this life is. This is hell, you know. But the scriptures talk about those that endure until the end. So this was always a test. It was always a trial. And you have many that bowed out and will bow out when the real going gets tough. All right. So Matthew 18:7, it says, woe unto the world because of offenses. For it must needs be that offenses come, but woe to that man by whom the offenses or the offense cometh. All right. All right. So it says woe, meaning destruction. Okay. Matthew 18:7 in the NLT, it says, what sorrow awaits the world because it tempts people to sin. Temptations are inevitable, but what sorrow awaits the person who does the tempting. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't use that, but yeah, the KJV is fine enough for this one. But let's continue. All right, and this won't be long. I want to play this video. Here it's called Disrupt, Identify, Defund, Debank, Arrest, and Prosecute. Trump administration threatens leftist groups. And of course, they're going to try to lump us in with leftist groups and call us terrorists and all of these people who are trying to disrupt the American dream, which we know there ain't no such thing as an American dream. It's always been a lie. It's always been the elite, class, ruling how they see fit, and corruption, and, hindering the process of others, gaining anything in this world. All right. We know it's all by design, but I digress. We can go on and on and on, but again, Esau is mounting up. The accuser of our brethren, all right, he is about to go on his attack, all right, on the ministry. All right, now he might not say, Hebrew Israelites or, but they for sure this is nothing but a pretense to lump us in right along with them. So here you go.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio, White House advisor Stephen Miller are pushing for a global crackdown on leftist organizations. On Thursday, as
global crackdown, all right? Fair use, fair use. All right, fair use. All right, this is for educational purposes only. Okay, we're not making any money off of these videos or using these videos, all right? So I'll continue, all right? Here we go.
hours before President Trump's primetime address, the State Department hosted an international summit where Miller described the left as, quote, enemies of civilization. This is part of Stephen Miller's speech.
Here in the United States, we have taken...
And it's funny, they project exactly what they are onto others. It's insane. But that's how the devil works, all right? That's why you got to know who he is. He's the devil. You can tell you already know right off who he is, and what he is,
taken the necessary and essential action of formally recognizing left-wing violence as a form of political terrorism that is a direct threat to our national security and the survival of our Republican form of government. President Trump issued a directive in our parlance. It's called a National Security Presidential Memorandum, or NSPM, NSPM 7 to be exact, that directs for the first time in American history all of our law enforcement and intelligence agencies to work together to disrupt, identify, defund, debank, arrest, and prosecute these political terrorists that are operating in our country. It's very important to understand that left-wing political terrorism seeks as its ultimate end the overthrow of our system and form of government.
All right, as you can see, okay, disrupt, identify, defund, debank, arrest, and prosecute. All right, and of course they're going to be doing it to their own, but eventually they will come after the truth, you know, those that speak uprightly, okay, because this truth grieves Esau. They're grieved by it, you know. Revelations 11:11 explains that, you know, and we stood on our feet and great fear fell upon them. We saw, all right, this spiritual awakening, you know, has startled these Edomites in their, you know, in their corrupt hegemony. All right, it's finally coming to its knees. All right, so, okay, and Esau's, he's got to make his move. All right, this is, and really, to be honest, he has no other move. He has to make this move. Okay, there's no other way he can play it. All right, and this is a spiritual game of chess. You know, him versus the Lord. You know, and eventually he's going to have to go after the Lord's pawns, which, you know, that'll be us. You know, because we're nothing but a mouthpiece of the Lord. You know, the men of the Lord who have been raised up to prophesy and to pull down the strongholds of this world, the evil, the wicked, corruption, and reveal these things, all right, to the believers, okay? And it's a small number compared to those in the world, you know. But again, I digress. Here we go.
Thursday, the State Department announced new visa restrictions targeting what it calls, quote, members of far-left terrorist and other aligned groups. Secretary of State Rubio talked about targeting.
Right, aligned groups. So it's going to fall under the category of us wanting to overthrow their, their Republican state, whatever rhetoric they may use. You know, and they're going to align us, and we're not aligned with anybody in this world. We're not leftists. We're not part of any political group. You know, we have just woken up to who we truly are, and the powers that be, the people who are in seats of power have been, you know, paying and doing all sorts of things to try to keep the truth away from us. We even know in 1832, the House of Delegates, Henry Louis Gates had said that we will, you know, basically, and I'm not saying it verbatim, but they said they will block every form of light that enters into the so-called black's mind, meaning they don't want us to have any form of light and truth or, you know, realization of self, all right? And that's why we were murdered and killed if we've read books. Okay, if we knew how to write, we were, you know, it was a threat. Okay, and how much more now where, you know, Esau is pretty much calling back, you know, and putting forth these sciences, the pseudoscience that he used to, you know, justify the, you know, murdering, and, you know, and he put it in the, you know, in his, you know, this thing, what they call eugenics, you know, and other things. All right, so, you know, let's get a few precepts, and like I said, this ain't gonna be long. We know what's going. Okay, this man is terribly mad that he's been exposed. Okay, He's been exposed, and his response is to what? He's hysterical. So he's going to lie and cheat, and he's going to, as the scriptures say, accuse the brethren. All right? Accuse the brethren. And in fact, this Psalms 50, I'll just cue it up really quick. Psalms 50, and right, I'll start at 16. All right. The point being in 20. Okay, and this chapter is so profound. All right, because it explains who the wicked are and what they have been doing, and essentially, what the Lord has done as a response to their wickedness. Psalms 50 and 16. But unto the wicked God saith, what hast thou to do to declare my statutes, and that thou shouldest take my covenant in thy mouth. All right. Why bother reciting my decrees, as the NLT puts it? Right. Why put the Bible and swearing in on the Bible if you're not going to uphold any of its merits or any of its laws? Okay. Why? Okay. And this is what we're calling out. You have claimed to be a Christian, Judeo-Christian of Judeo-Christian origin, but you have done the complete opposite. You have murdered, you have lied, you have cheated all your way to the top, and you're mad because this truth exposes you and the wealth that you have acquired, and it just calls you out as illegitimate. Okay, and of course you won't own up to it. You will double down on who you are. The devil. All right. Verse 17, seeing thou hatest instruction and castest my words behind thee, okay, when thou sawest a thief, then thou consentest with them. Okay, you had Esau, you had the faction of Edomites stealing the land, stealing even our customs, and creating a religion out of it, and saying that they're God's people. But what did they do here in America? They were with it. They were with it. The Christian Zionists, they become Christian Zionists, and they, with the youths who say that they're the children of God, and they're fulfilling prophecy, and it's completely, absolutely, invalid, um, fraudulent, but that's just who they are. It says, when thou sawest a thief, then thou consentest with them, and hast been partaker with adulterers. All right. When you see thieves, you approve of them, and you spend your time with adulterers. Exactly. All right. Thou givest thy mouth to evil, and thy frameth deceit. All right. Right. Your tongue is full of lies. Thou sittest and speakest against thy brother. Right. And that's the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American. They are speaking against us, calling us criminals, calling us immigrants, calling us all these foul things, and only to justify, detaining, arresting, murdering, doing all sorts of things that they've always done. Nothing has ever changed. And that's why they want to decorate and keep America, the thought of America, the name of America, the reputation of America, in a decorative type of, visage. In reality, it's corruption, it's worms, it's corrosion, you know, it's rust. Okay. So it says, thou sittest and speakest against thy brother, thou slanderest thine own mother's son. Right? And that's the so-called white man slandering the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American, calling us criminals, calling us all of these things. All right. Which, you, created the environment in which, you know, changed us into these savages. All right. And made us estranged from our God. Verse 21, these things thou hast done, and I kept silence. Thou thoughtest that I was altogether such an one as thyself. Right. So you thought that the Lord was fine with it, that the Lord approved of it because nothing was done. No alarm was raised. You didn't, have to fear the Lord, bringing forth judgment upon you. And so you kept doing what you kept doing. All right, because sentence against the evil work is not executed speedily. Therefore, the sons of the heart, the hearts of the sons of men are set in their ways to do evil. Roughly paraphrasing, right? Because nobody stopped you. No one has said, "Hey, that's foul play," except the ones you've been oppressing, and you can easily silence our voices. Okay, so it says, but it says, "But I will reprove thee and set them in order before thine eyes." NLT says, "But now I will rebuke you, listing all my charges against you." And that's why you have the men of the Lord who are being raised up, who, you know, bring forth the truth about all the past, the history of the so-called white man, the history of America, the true origins, all right, and how you acquire wealth off the backs of slaves and denied slaves, access and treated us inhumane, and you continue to do the same things under the guise of so many mantras and so many, fake, movements, and you know, so what the Lord is what we're accusing you to your face, all right? As the scriptures say, then shall the righteous man stand in great boldness, right? Wisdom of Solomon 5:1, then shall the righteous man stand in great boldness before the face of such as have afflicted him and made no account of his labors, right? And so what's happening? The righteous man is standing in great boldness before what? Our oppressors. And what is Esau's response? He's grieved, right? He's pissed. He's angry. He's mad. Why? Because he's been called out, right? And all his witchcraft has been figured out. So what do they do as a response? Wisdom of Solomon 2, this is what they say. It says, "Let us oppress the poor righteous man. Let us not spare the widow, nor reverence the ancient gray hairs of the age." You see, say they're going to overstep boundaries, and they're going to, you know, oppress people who have no strength to fight back, who have no will to fight back. They're going to oppress people who can't speak up for themselves, people that they can loudly just speak over, and people will just believe them. All right. So their whole MO is what? To oppress the poor righteous man. All right. And that's the Israelite man. Right. Wisdom of Solomon 2:11. Just lucky for the background noise. Let our strength be the law of justice. All right. Okay. For that which is feeble is found to be nothing worth. So let our strength be the law of justice. So that's what you see when you see them saying this. We're going to, my bad. We're going to disrupt, identify, defund, debank, arrest, and prosecute. Well, they frame in mischief as a law. Okay, this is they're using the law to bring forth deceit, to bring forth oppression. So let our strength be the law of justice, for that which is feeble is found to be nothing worth. Right. So we are counted as feeble. Right. So to them we're worth nothing, but they're going to use the law of justice to oppress us, to arrest us, to do all sorts of things, to cut off our bank accounts. All right. And to do more harm and more oppressive things, more than they have done before. Therefore, let us lie and wait for the righteous, because he is not for our turn, and he is clean contrary to our doing. So if we were for the oppression and saying, if we had drape, what's the term? Is drapetomania, something, I forget the scientific term that they use, which basically say, we just side with our oppressor, um, if Stockholm syndrome, we are intimately, you know, for those who have been harming us and hurting us, you know, that's what they want us to have, Stockholm syndrome, right? Therefore, let us lie and wait for the righteous, because he is not for our turn, and he is clean contrary to our doings. He upbraideth us, we curse you out, with our offending the law, because that's what they do. All they have been doing is offending the law, and objected to our infamy, all right, the transgressings of our education, right? Because they're completely off, right? He professed to have the knowledge of God. He calleth himself the child of the Lord, right? He was made to reprove our thoughts. He is grievous unto us even to behold, for his life is not like other men's, his ways are of another fashion. And this is why they're angry. They're angry because the truth is out, right? The skirt is lifted. But the Lord said he was going to do it, and prophecy fulfilled. All right. So we are esteemed of him as counterfeits. Yes, they're phony, they're fakes, they're bogus, right? He abstaineth from our ways as from filthiness. Right, the American way. We don't take part in it. Your high holy days, July 4th, the Columbus Day, Christmas, Easter, all of those things are abomination in our eyes. He pronounced it the end of the just to be blessed, right? And maketh his boast that God is his father, right? And this is true, you know. This is why they hate us as well, right? It just makes things more, you know, hateful for them. All right. Let us see if his words be true. Let us prove what shall happen in the end of him. So what? They're going to test it, right? They're going to test what we're saying. Okay. But that's the Lord's will. For if the just man be the son of God, he will help him and deliver him from the hand of his enemies. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to test that theory. We're saying the Lord is going to get us out of prison. He's going to save us. He's going to give us spiritual power. Well, guess what? They're going to try it because they don't at all respect the Lord. All right. But as the scriptures say, when they think him to not be of full strength, then shall what? I'll read it. We're going to read it. Right? Wisdom of Solomon 12:17. For when men will not believe that thou art of a full power, thou shewest thy strength. And that's when it's going to happen because we know the Lord is one that hideth himself. Right? He don't reveal himself unto man. Because the Lord don't care for pride. All right, the Lord ain't got pride like that, but he will stand up for the innocent when the time needs be. All right, and among them that know it, it maketh their boldness manifest. Because when the Lord show his power, we're gonna be bold, right, and they're gonna be struck with fear. Okay, and they're gonna be in complete ruin. All right, they're gonna be in complete ruin. All right. And the scriptures say what they're gonna come after the upright speech. All right. They'll come after upright speech. Okay. See if it comes up. Speaketh uprightly. All right. Because the time is coming, man, and you know, hey, yep, Isaiah. Uh-oh. No, that ain't it. Yep, Amos 5:10. It says they hate him that rebuketh in the gate, and they abhor him that speaketh uprightly. That's right. You know, and essentially they're gonna make us an offender for a word. They're gonna persecute us and arrest us for words. Why? Because their little minds, their little selves can't handle words. I'm telling you, and they're really weak, and that's why they go after the poor. The poor righteous. They're very weak and very vulnerable and very lighthearted. And so everything grieves them, especially the truth. So hey, Lord, be with us. Yahweh Shemel Shai, be with us, because very unfair things are gonna happen and take place, and it always have been. It ain't nothing new. It's just this time the Lord's gonna raise up a standard, and they'll be through. So Lord willing, this was edifying. Until next time, I say shalom.